Totally. And it was going to cost her everything. "Get out," Jennifer said, her voice barely a whisper. "Both of you get out of my company." "It's not your company," Jeffrey said gently. "It never was." Jennifer grabbed her purse and walked toward the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor, the same sharp, dismissive sound. Jeffrey had heard the night she'd handed him the divorce papers, but this time she was the one leaving in defeat. Brian followed her, moving quickly, not looking back. The door closed behind them, and the room slowly came back to life. Board members were murmuring, some looking shaken, others impressed. Thomas Bradford approached Jeffrey. He struggled for words. "I'm not sure what I just witnessed." "Justice," Claire said quietly. Thomas nodded slowly. "I suppose it was. Jeffrey, I apologize. We should have been paying closer attention to company operations. This should never have gotten this far." "It's not your fault," Jeffrey said. Jennifer was very good at appearing competent. The problems were deliberately hidden. "What happens now?" another board member asked. "Does the company have a CEO?" Jeffrey looked around the room. These were people who'd built their careers on judging leadership, on understanding organizational dynamics. They had just watched him dismantle Jennifer's facade with patience and precision. They knew what came next. "I'll take over as CEO," Jeffrey said, effective immediately. "We'll need to do some damage control, repair relationships with clients who might have questions, and conduct a full financial audit," Jeffrey said. "But Cloud Tech will survive this. We'll be stronger for it." Thomas extended his hand. "I think that's the right call." They shook hands and Jeffrey felt something settle in his chest. Relief maybe, or vindication, or just the satisfaction of being seen accurately for the first time in years. The formal meeting adjourned, and people began filing out, toward the holiday party still happening in the ballroom. Claire pulled Jeffrey aside. "How do you feel?" she asked. Jeffrey considered the question. Tired, sad, relieved, angry, all of it at once. "That's reasonable." Claire squeezed his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Jeff. You know that, right?" "I know I did the legal thing," Jeffrey said. "Whether it was the right thing, I guess time will tell." They walked back into the ballroom together. The party was still going, though word had clearly spread. People were clustered in small groups, whispering, casting curious glances at Jeffrey. Some looked sympathetic, some looked impressed. A few looked wary, probably wondering what Jeffrey knew about their own dealings with the company. Jeffrey found a quiet corner and pulled out his phone. He had dozens of messages. News traveled fast in Seattle's tech scene. But one message caught his attention. It was from an unknown number. "Well played, Mr. Graney. If you ever need legal counsel for the inevitable lawsuit, Jennifer will file. Call me. David Park, Harrison and Park, LLP." Jeffrey smiled slightly. The vultures were already circling, smelling blood in the water. Jennifer would indeed sue. She'd fight this with everything she had. But Jeffrey had fought his battle already. In silence and shadow for 3 years. Whatever came next, he was ready. He was about to put his phone away when it rang. Jennifer's name flashed on the screen. Jeffrey hesitated, then answered. "Jennifer." "How long?" Her voice was ragged, stripped of all its usual confidence. "How long have you known about the ownership structure?" 3 years. "About you and Brian?" "About 18 months. "About the embezzlement?" "About a year." A sharp intake of breath. "You've just been watching, waiting." "Yes." "Why?" The word came out as almost a sob. "Why didn't you just confront me? Why did you have to destroy me in front of everyone?" Jeffrey looked across the ballroom. At all the people who'd watched Jennifer, treat him like he was worthless, who'd seen her parade Brian around like a trophy, who'd heard her casual cruelty and said nothing because she was the winner. "You didn't just want to leave me, Jennifer," Jeffrey said quietly. "You wanted to destroy me. The non-compete clause, you wanted to make sure I couldn't rebuild, that I couldn't compete. You wanted me to know I'd lost everything while you won everything. So I let you think you had won, and then I showed you what losing actually looks like." Silence on the other end. "Then I loved you once." "I know," Jeffrey said. "I loved you too. But love doesn't excuse what you did. What happens now? Now you face the consequences. The board will likely recommend we file charges for the embezzlement. The divorce will proceed, but on very different terms. And you'll need to find a new career, because you'll never work in this industry again. Not after tonight. Another long silence. Then Jennifer hung up without another word. Jeffrey stood there in the middle of the party, holding his silent phone, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. He'd won, decisively, completely. So why did he still feel hollow? Claire appeared at his elbow with 2 glasses of wine. "Drink," she commanded. Jeffrey took the glass and drank. The wine was expensive, probably something Jennifer had selected for the party. He wondered if she'd thought about this moment when she'd ordered it, imagined herself celebrating her triumph as CEO while Jeffrey sat at home alone. The universe had a sense of irony, apparently. "Reporters are already calling," Claire said. "TechCrunch got wind of something happening. How do you want to handle the press?" Jeffrey thought about it. The old Jeffrey, the quiet, introverted one who'd been happy, coding in the background, would have hidden from the spotlight. Let someone else handle communications. But that Jeffrey had been taken advantage of, had been betrayed, had been assumed to be weak. The new Jeffrey knew better. "I'll give a statement tomorrow," he said. "Factual, professional. We'll control the narrative." Claire nodded approvingly. "I'll help you draft it." They stood together, watching the party continue around them. People were starting to approach Jeffrey now, cautiously at first, then with increasing boldness. Investors who wanted to assure him of their continued support. Employees who wanted to congratulate him. Even a few people who'd ignored him for years, suddenly finding him fascinating. Jeffrey handled each conversation with the same calm professionalism he'd shown. In the board meeting, he answered questions, made reassuring statements about CloudTech's future, accepted congratulations with grace. But inside, part of him was still in that kitchen, watching Jennifer hand him divorce papers with contempt in her eyes. Part of him was still the husband who'd been betrayed, the partner who'd been stolen from, the man who'd been told he wasn't enough. Victory tasted sweeter than he'd expected, but it also tasted like ash. Around midnight, Jeffrey finally left the hotel. The rain had stopped, and Seattle's winter air was crisp and cold against his face. He walked to his car alone, his footsteps echoing in the parking garage. His phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. Against his better judgment, Jeffrey answered. "Mr. Graney," a woman's voice said, professional, familiar somehow. "This is Rebecca Morrison. I work at the Seattle Times business section. I was hoping—" "No comment," Jeffrey said automatically. "I understand, but Mr. Graney, I've been following CloudTech's growth for years. And I have to ask, did you plan this? Was this revenge?" Jeffrey paused with his hand on his car door. It was a good question. Had this been revenge, or justice, or just self-defense taken to its logical conclusion? "Miss Morrison," he said finally, "I didn't plan to be betrayed. I didn't plan to discover my wife was embezzling from the company we'd built. I didn't plan for any of this. But once I knew the truth, I had a choice. I could accept the role Jennifer had written for me, the weak, disposable husband who'd served his purpose, or I could stand up for myself. I chose the latter, so no. This wasn't revenge. No, Jeffrey said. It was consequences. Sometimes people confuse the two." He hung up before she could ask another question. Jeffrey drove home through empty streets, his mind replaying the evening's events on an endless loop. Every moment, every expression on Jennifer's face as she realized what was happening. Every board member's vote. He'd won. But what had he actually won? Control of a company he'd have to rebuild. A reputation that would always include tonight's events. A divorce that would be even messier now. And loneliness. So much loneliness. Jeffrey pulled into the driveway of the Bellevue house, the one that was supposed to be his consolation prize. Most of his things were already here, boxes stacked in the garage waiting to be unpacked. But as he sat in the dark car, engine cooling and ticking in the silence, he realized something. He didn't want this house. He didn't want the life Jennifer had tried to force him into. He didn't want to be defined by what he'd lost or by what he'd won. He wanted to build something new, something authentic. Tomorrow he'd start. He'd meet with the board, start the audit, begin the process of healing. CloudTech, and turning it into the company it should have been all along. But tonight Jeffrey just sat in the darkness and let himself feel everything. The hurt, the anger, the vindication, the emptiness. He'd won the battle. Now came the harder part, figuring out what came after victory. His phone buzzed one last time. A text from Claire. "Proud of you, little brother. Dad would be too." Jeffrey smiled, though tears stung his eyes. His father had taught him patience, strategy, the importance of playing the long game. Jeffrey had learned those lessons well. But there was one more lesson his father had tried to teach him, one Jeffrey hadn't understood until tonight. Winning isn't the hard part, son. It's knowing what you're actually fighting for. Jeffrey finally understood. He'd thought he was fighting for justice, for vindication, for the company he'd built, but really he'd been fighting for something simpler, more fundamental. He'd been fighting for the right to be seen as he actually was, not as Jennifer's accessory, not as the technical guy who'd served his purpose, but as Jeffrey Graney, capable, intelligent, worthy of respect. He'd won that fight. Now he just had to figure out what to do with the victory. Monday morning arrived with surprising normalcy. Jeffrey woke up in the Bellevue house, made coffee in a kitchen that still felt temporary, and dressed for work like it was any other day. Except, of course, it wasn't. He was now the acting CEO of Cloud Tech Solutions, and he had a company to save. The drive to the downtown Seattle office took 30 minutes through traffic. Jeffrey used the time to mentally prepare, going through the list of immediate tasks: financial audit, staff meeting, damage control with clients, communication with investors. The list went on. When he pulled into the parking garage, Jeffrey noticed something unusual. The reserved space marked CEO was empty. Jennifer's silver Tesla wasn't there. For 3 years, that car had been a constant presence, a symbol of her dominance in the space they'd shared. Now it was just an empty parking spot. Jeffrey parked in the visitor section. He'd change the signage later. He took the elevator to the 8th floor. The Cloud Tech offices occupied the entire level, all glass walls and open workspaces, designed to foster collaboration. Jennifer had spent a fortune redesigning the space last year. It was beautiful, modern, and it suddenly felt very empty. The receptionist, a young woman named Stephanie, looked up as Jeffrey entered. Her eyes widened with recognition, and something that might have been awe. "Mr. Graney, good morning, welcome." "Good morning, Stephanie," Jeffrey said, giving her what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Is the senior staff assembled in the conference room?" "Yes, sir. They've been waiting since 8. Jeffrey checked his watch. 8:15, he'd deliberately arrived late. Let them wait just long enough to feel the weight of what was happening. The conference room fell silent when Jeffrey entered. 6 faces looked up at him, the heads of engineering, sales, marketing, operations, HR, and legal. These were the people who'd worked most closely with Jennifer. Some looked curious, others looked worried. All of them looked uncertain. "Good morning," Jeffrey said, taking the seat at the head of the table, Jennifer's seat. "I'm sure you all have questions. Let me start by being direct. Jennifer Graney is no longer CEO of Cloud Tech Solutions. I've assumed that role effective immediately. This change is permanent, not temporary." Sarah Kim, the head of HR, cleared her throat. "With all respect, Mr. Graney, can you tell us what happened?" "The rumors flying around are varied." "I imagine they are," Jeffrey said. He pulled out his tablet and brought up a document. "Here's what I can tell you." An emergency board vote was held Friday evening. The vote was unanimous to remove Jennifer as CEO due to multiple violations of corporate policy and fiduciary duty. I won't go into specifics right now, but everything was done according to our bylaws and with full legal authority. David Singh, the engineering lead, leaned forward. "Is the company in trouble? Should we be worried about layoffs?" "The company is not in trouble," Jeffrey assured him. "Our technology is solid, our clients are happy, and our financials are strong. What we do need is a complete audit to ensure everything is above board going forward. There will be changes, yes, but Cloud Tech isn't going anywhere." "What about Brian Montgomery?" This from Janet Torres, the head of sales. "Is he still CFO?" "Mr. Montgomery resigned Friday evening," Jeffrey said, his voice neutral. "We'll be conducting a search for a new CFO. In the interim, our accounting firm will help manage financial operations." More questions followed, each one probing at different aspects of the situation. Jeffrey answered what he could. deflected what he couldn't, and generally tried to project calm confidence. These people needed to believe Cloud Tech had a future, and he needed to be the one to convince them. The meeting lasted an hour. By the end, the senior staff looked somewhat reassured, though still uncertain about what the transition would mean for their departments. As everyone filed out, Janet Torres hung back. She was in her 50s, a veteran of Seattle's tech scene who joined Cloud Tech 2 years ago. She closed the conference room door. "Can I speak honestly?" Janet asked. "Please." "A lot of us saw what Jennifer was doing to you," Janet said. "The way she treated you at company events, the dismissive comments, the way she'd roll her eyes when you tried to contribute to discussions. Her expression was serious. Some of us thought it was wrong, but nobody said anything because, well, she was the CEO. Jeffrey felt something twist in his chest. They'd known. They'd seen. And they'd said nothing. "I don't blame anyone for staying quiet," Jeffrey said, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. "People need their jobs." "Maybe," Janet said, "but I want you to know. I'm glad you're in charge now. Jennifer was brilliant at sales. I won't take that from her, but she'd become ruthless. Started treating people as disposable. The culture here was getting toxic." She paused. "You might not believe this, but people are relieved." After Janet left, Jeffrey sat alone in the conference room for a few minutes. He'd been so focused on Jennifer's betrayal of him, personally, that he hadn't fully considered how her behavior had affected the entire company. How many other people had she treated poorly? How many employees had felt the same casual cruelty Jeffrey had experienced? His phone rang. An unknown number again, but he was getting used to that. Jeffrey Graney. "Mr. Graney, this is Diane Pasternak from the Washington State Attorney General's office." Jeffrey's stomach dropped. "How can I help you, Ms. Pasternak?" "We've received information regarding possible financial irregularities at Cloud Tech Solutions. Specifically, allegations of embezzlement and misuse of corporate funds. I'm calling to request your cooperation with an investigation." So it had begun. Someone, probably one of the board members, had filed a formal complaint. The legal machinery was grinding into motion. "I'm happy to cooperate fully," Jeffrey said. "In fact, I've been compiling evidence for the past year. I can provide you with complete documentation." There was a pause. "You've been investigating internally. I discovered the irregularities about a year ago. I documented everything while deciding how to proceed." "I see." Diane Pasternak's voice shifted from official to interested. "Mr. Graney, would you be available to meet this week? I think we should discuss this in detail." They scheduled a meeting for Wednesday afternoon. After hanging up, Jeffrey sat back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Jennifer wasn't just losing her job. She was potentially facing criminal charges. Part of him felt vindicated, but another part, the part that had loved her for 15 years, just felt sad. The rest of Monday was consumed with meetings, emails, and phone calls. Clients wanted reassurance. Investors wanted explanations. Employees wanted to know if their jobs were secure. Jeffrey handled each conversation with the same patient professionalism, slowly building confidence that Cloud Tech would survive its sudden leadership change. By 5:00, Jeffrey was exhausted. He was preparing to leave when Stephanie called from reception. "Mr. Graney, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent." "Who is it?" Stephanie paused. "Jennifer Graney." Jeffrey's first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity and perhaps some lingering sense of obligation made him agree. "Send her to my office." He waited, standing by the window that looked out over Seattle's downtown. The city stretched below, lights beginning to flicker on as evening approached. In the reflection, Jeffrey saw the office door open behind him. Jennifer looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, clothing Jeffrey recognized from years ago, before the designer suits and expensive accessories. She looked, Jeffrey thought, like the woman he'd married, young, vulnerable, human. "Thank you for seeing me," Jennifer said quietly. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. "You said it was urgent." "I've been getting calls from attorneys. The Attorney General's office, the IRS, Jeffrey. They're saying I could face criminal charges. That I could go to prison. Jeffrey turned to face her fully. Is that why you're here? To ask me to make this go away? Can you? Hope flared in Jennifer's eyes, desperate and pathetic. No, Jeffrey said. I didn't file the complaints. The board did, or possibly one of the investors. I don't control what happens next. That's up to the legal system. Jennifer's face crumpled. She sank into one of the office chairs, her hands covering her face. My whole life is destroyed. My career, my reputation, everything. All because of one mistake. One mistake? Jeffrey's voice hardened. Jennifer, you embezzled $400,000. You violated corporate policy dozens of times. You put the entire company at risk. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of behavior. I know, Jennifer whispered. I know. But Jeffrey, we built this company together. Doesn't that count for something? Can't you find it in yourself to help me? Jeffrey studied her. There was genuine remorse in her expression, real fear in her eyes. But there was also manipulation, the tears timed perfectly, the trembling voice. The appeal to their shared history. She'd always been good at selling. I'm not going to lie for you, Jeffrey said. I'm not going to hide evidence or downplay what happened. You made choices, Jennifer. Now you live with the consequences. Even if it means I go to prison? Even then? Yes, even then. Jennifer looked up at him, and for a moment, Jeffrey saw real hatred flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by resignation. I'd never meant to hurt you, she said. I know you don't believe that, but it's true. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a partner. I started seeing you as an obstacle. And once I started thinking that way, it became easy to justify everything else. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know, Jennifer said. And because I need you to understand that I didn't start out wanting to destroy you. I just got lost somewhere. Got caught up in power and success and forgot what actually mattered. She walked toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I am. After she left, Jeffrey stood alone in his office for a long time. The sky outside had darkened fully, and the city lights glittered like scattered diamonds. Jennifer's apology had felt genuine. But did that change anything? Did remorse excuse betrayal? Did understanding someone's motivations mean forgiving their actions? Jeffrey didn't know. He was too tired to know. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of work. Jeffrey threw himself into rebuilding cloud tech, meeting with every department, reviewing every process, slowly reshaping the company into something that reflected his values instead of Jennifer's. The media attention was intense at first. Tech blogs ran stories about the dramatic boardroom confrontation. Business publications analyzed the legal implications. A few sympathetic pieces appeared defending Jennifer, painting Jeffrey as a vindictive ex-husband. More pieces praised his patience and strategic thinking. Jeffrey ignored most of it. He'd said what he needed to say in one carefully crafted statement. Everything else was noise. The Attorney General's investigation moved forward. Jeffrey met with Diane Pasternak twice, providing detailed documentation of every financial irregularity he'd discovered. The evidence was damning. Jennifer would likely face charges. Brian Montgomery had vanished entirely. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. His phone went straight to voicemail. According to Claire's sources, he'd moved to Portland and was working at a small accounting firm under a different name. Jennifer, to her credit, didn't run. She hired a criminal defense attorney and prepared to face whatever consequences were coming. A month after the board meeting, Jeffrey sat in his apartment. He'd sold the Bellevue house and bought something smaller, simpler, reviewing the company's quarterly report. Cloud Tech had actually grown during the transition. Clients appreciated the transparency. Employees responded to the improved culture. The numbers were strong. His phone rang. Not unknown this time. He recognized the number as Claire's. Hey, he answered. Are you sitting down? Claire asked. Should I be? Jennifer took a plea deal. She's pleading guilty to embezzlement and financial fraud. In exchange for cooperation and full restitution, the prosecution is recommending 2 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. Jeffrey processed this. When? Sentencing is next month. She wanted me to tell you. She won't fight the divorce anymore. She's agreeing to all your terms. She'll sign whatever you want. Does she need money? Jeffrey found himself asking. Mark, does she? A sigh. Her legal fees have cleaned her out. She's broke. Her parents are helping, but they're retired and don't have much to spare. Jeffrey thought about the young woman he'd married, the one who'd believed in their dream, who'd stayed up late, helping him debug code even though she didn't understand programming, who'd held his hand at his father's funeral and promised they'd build something beautiful together. That woman and this woman were the same person. Somehow tell her I'll pay for a good defense attorney, Jeffrey said. Not to get the charges dropped, to make sure she gets fair representation. Jeffrey, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. But she was right about one thing. We did build this together in the beginning, before everything went wrong. I can't forget that just because I'm angry. 3 weeks later, Jeffrey sat in a courthouse, watching Jennifer stand before a judge. She looked small in her conservative suit, her hair pulled back, her face carefully neutral. The judge reviewed the plea agreement, asked Jennifer if she understood the terms, confirmed she was entering the plea voluntarily. Jennifer answered each question in a quiet, steady voice. Ms. Graney, the judge said finally, do you have anything you'd like to say before I pronounce sentence? Jennifer looked down at her hands. Then she looked up, and her eyes found Jeffrey in the gallery. I'd like to apologize, she said, to the people I hurt, to the company I damaged, and especially to my husband, my ex-husband, who I betrayed in the worst ways possible. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you all to know that I understand what I did was wrong. Deeply wrong, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be better than I was. The judge nodded. Ms. Graney, I hereby sentence you to 24 months in a federal correctional facility, with eligibility for parole after 18 months served. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to Cloud Tech Solutions, and you will be barred from serving as an officer or director of any publicly traded company for 10 years. The gavel came down. Jennifer closed her eyes briefly, then opened them and nodded. She'd known this was coming, had prepared for it. As the bailiffs led her away, she looked back one more time at Jeffrey. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just looked at him with an expression that might have been gratitude, or might have been goodbye. Then she was gone. Jeffrey left the courthouse and found Claire waiting outside. How do you feel? She asked. It was becoming his least favorite question, but he tried to answer honestly. I feel like something ended, finally, completely. That's probably healthy. They walked to a nearby coffee shop, ordered expensive lattes neither of them would finish, and sat by the window watching people hurry past on the sidewalk. What happens now? Claire asked. Jeffrey thought about Cloud Tech, about the company he was building into something good and sustainable, about the team that was starting to trust him, about the future that suddenly seemed wide open instead of predetermined. Now I figure out who I am when I'm not defined by her, Jeffrey said. When I'm not the betrayed husband, or the vindicated winner, or the patient strategist. Just Jeffrey. Building something worth building. Sounds lonely. Maybe for a while. Jeffrey smiled slightly. But I've been lonely before. At least this time I'm choosing it. 6 months later, Cloud Tech Solutions announced record profits. Jeffrey had restructured the company around sustainable growth rather than rapid expansion. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. 3 major clients had signed long-term contracts. Jeffrey was sitting in his office reviewing the numbers when Stephanie buzzed. Mr. Graney, there's a call from the Federal Correctional Institution at Victorville. Someone named Jennifer Graney is asking to speak with you. Jeffrey had been expecting this call, though he wasn't sure why. Put it through. The line clicked. Then Jennifer's voice, sounding strange and distant. Jeffrey. Hi. Hi, Jennifer. I wasn't sure you'd take the call. I almost didn't. A pause. In the background, Jeffrey could hear other voices, the ambient noise of a prison common area. I wanted to tell you something, she said. I've been thinking a lot in here. About choices, and consequences, and who I became. And I realized something. You showed me mercy I didn't deserve. What do you mean? The attorney you paid for. The fact that you didn't testify against me even though you could have. The settlement terms you agreed to that left me with something to rebuild with when I get out. You could have destroyed me completely, Jeffrey. But you didn't. Jeffrey looked out his window at the Seattle skyline. I didn't do it for you, Jennifer. I did it because I needed to be able to live with myself. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it doesn't heal anything. Still, thank you. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important. The weather, how CloudTech was doing, whether Jeffrey was dating anyone. He wasn't, but not for lack of interested parties. Then the automated system announced their time was up. Take care of yourself, Jeffrey. You too, Jennifer. The line went dead. Jeffrey sat there for a while, thinking about the long, strange journey that had brought him here. From that night in the kitchen, when Jennifer had handed him divorce papers, through the boardroom confrontation, to this moment of unexpected closure, he'd won. He'd gotten everything he'd fought for. Control of his company, vindication of his worth, justice for the wrongs done to him. But victory, Jeffrey had learned, was more complicated than he'd expected. It wasn't pure triumph. It was mixed with loss and sadness and the recognition that winning sometimes meant everyone lost something. His father had been right. Winning wasn't the hard part. Knowing what you were actually fighting for, that was the challenge. And now, finally, Jeffrey knew. He'd been fighting for the right to be seen as he truly was, for the freedom to build a life on his own terms, for the peace that came from standing up for yourself without becoming the person who hurt you. He'd won those fights, and the victory, complicated and bittersweet as it was, felt real. Jeffrey turned back to his computer and opened a new document. He started typing, outlining plans for CloudTech's next phase, expansion into new markets, investment in employee development, partnerships that aligned with his values. He was building something now. Not just a company, but a legacy, not defined by Jennifer or what she'd done to him, but by his own choices, his own vision, his own understanding of what success actually meant. And for the first time in years, Jeffrey felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not hope that everything would be perfect, not hope that there wouldn't be more challenges ahead, but hope that he was finally on a path that was authentically his own. That was enough. That was everything. If you were pulled into this story of betrayal and quiet victory, hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below for more gripping tales of justice, strategy, and the moments that change everything. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching. Until next time.